going to do it. I'll start in a minute. Welcome, everybody. Hi, my name is Becky Tallent. I am a 65-year-old little old white lady with gray hair, and I'm wearing a white dress. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm honored to be here today doing the service, and I'm a nervous wreck. So, welcome to First Unitarian Church, where thank you. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness. No matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming, we greet you here today with love. I'd like to extend a special welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube this morning. During the prelude, please introduce yourselves in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from. If you're in Oklahoma City, what neighborhood you're in, and if you're elsewhere, what city are you in? I have a special announcement. It's so exciting. We have hired a choir director. His name is Chukwuebuka Ezeakacha. He's from Nigeria. He's finishing his doctorate degree in choral conducting at OU, and the choir will get to meet him first sometime, hopefully next week. We'll try to put that together. Look for more announcements and more information about him in the newsletter. We're very excited. Very excited. And today's flowers are given by me in memory of my buddy, Margaret Flansburgh, who we lost last week.
We light our chalice here in our building in Midtown, Oklahoma City, on land that was home to indigenous peoples, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land that was taken from the Muskogee, Seminole, and other removed and relocated peoples. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
The reading this morning is really from a sermon that I did a few years ago. It's the first one I did, actually, back in 1989, kind of a history. I'm very fortunate to have been raised in a church. In fact, church was so important growing up that my father got up every Sunday morning and drove my mother, my sister, and me to attend services. He promptly left. He went to have coffee and breakfast with his sister, Flossie. That's Ruth Gordon's mother, by the way. But he was always there promptly to pick us up after church. I know there were those who were critical of the fact he didn't go with us, but he was doing exactly what he needed to do. When I went off to college, my church attendance was limited to weekends when I went home, and my dad drove me, my mother, and my sister. I was no longer in choir or in Sunday school, so my involvement at that point was very minimal at best. Then I went to law school, where for 3 years the only religious experience I had was the hell bestowed upon me by sadistic professors and cutthroat fellow law students. After law school, I began to contemplate finding a church home. I'd been raised in the Methodist Church, although I preferred Presbyterian churches at the time. After numerous invitations from my cousin, Ruth Gordon, I finally came to this place in Easter of 1987. I have to admit that I was not very open-minded about Unitarianism at first, as I was accustomed to major denominations. It was not long before I realized that I had indeed been raised in such a way as to embrace the beliefs and values of this church, and I joined soon thereafter.
Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of August, our Change for Change partner is Positive Tomorrows. Positive Tomorrows partners with families experiencing homelessness to educate their children and create pathways to success. They provide food, shelter, healthcare, and education. Change for Change funds will be used to purchase iPads for children in the program to assist them to learning to read at more advanced levels. For those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment we'll be passing the offering plate. If you're not able to make a gift today, we invite you to write a note of encouragement to our Change for Change partner organizations, and we'll share those messages with them as well. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian, just write Change for Change on the memo line, or make an online payment through our website, firstuc.org.
I'm going to be talking about post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome a little bit later. And there's always a concern when you talk about PTSD that you're going to trigger yourself or someone else. So what I'd like to do in lieu of a meditation really is kind of a grounding exercise. I want everybody to relax. If closing your eyes helps you relax, fine. Whatever works for you. And just know, I just want you to think about the fact that you're in as safe a place as we can imagine right now. It's safe here. Everyone cares about you. You're here in Oklahoma City, it's Sunday morning, everything's fine. If you begin to feel yourself kind of floating away, maybe with a trigger, if you do have any PTSD triggers, put your feet on the floor, remember where you are. You're not in the place of a trauma, you're here. So everyone relax and know that this is a safe place. I told you I'm nervous.
Maestro.
You're right.
Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight.
Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a cord of silk and twine.
It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, safely through this world we go.
Can I take this? This is a poem called This is a poem called Autobiography in 5 short chapters. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to get out. Chapter 2. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. Okay, now it's my turn. When I first signed up to speak today, it was presumed I would speak about the choir, and I am thrilled I got to make that announcement about our new choir director. In fact, I joined the choir before I joined the church. I came in, as I said, Easter of 1987. What good Unitarian doesn't go to church on Easter Sunday? And I've always thought that was ironic. That was my first time. But I've enjoyed singing in the choir, and being in the choir has been such a blessing to me and to my life. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to do that here, and grateful for every time you all have let me sing for you. I've grown older in this church. I was 30 when I joined it, and now I'm 65 years old. For 35 years, I've been haunting this place. Now, I think that's what you can talk about teenagers, but I think 30 to 65 that's what you're calling formative years. That's my formative years. I've given a sermon in front of this church 5 times before: 89, 91, 95, 2007, and 2010. And this is my first one without my beloved Pat Corley. He always did something, whether it was a reading or some other kind of meditation or some announcements. He was always there. So I'm really missing him today too, as well as Margaret. Now, I'm not a mental health professional, but I do know a little bit about PTSD. Most of us have survived individual traumatic events. These days, with a pandemic and a war and mass shootings, it's caused an almost collective PTSD. There's one statistic that 6% of Americans will develop PTSD. Now, I found this definition in a magazine very helpful for our discussion. Trauma is defined as a person's psychological response to an event or series of events that threatens their physical and emotional safety. This can lead to difficult coping mechanisms and long-term struggles. I relied heavily on a book that Oprah Winfrey co-authored with a man named Bruce Perry called What Happened, and it's about healing from trauma. They explain that fetal brain development is even impacted by a host of post-traumatic trauma. It affects the neurochemicals in the biological mother's body. So that can affect the way a brain develops and the way things register after the child is born. The kinds of factors that work on that are the mother's stress, if she's financially stressed, if she's ill, if she's a victim of abuse. Drug, alcohol, or nicotine use by the mother, self-coping, coping mechanisms. The diet of the mother, and the patterns of activity of the mother. After birth, what happens when a baby doesn't get positive, nourishing, nurturing responses? That child can grow up to be hypervigilant, depressed, anxious, have OCD, or have an intense fear of abandonment. If you grow up in a household or community characterized by unpredictability, chaos, and an ongoing threat, you have the following stress responses. Now, we've all heard about fight versus flight, and that's reasonably simple. Fight, you respond in anger. Flight, you run away. But there are really four different responses, not neurochemical responses, but 4 different stress responses. Fight, flight. The third one, which is more common in children, is freeze, where you just hunker down and you try to become invisible. That's not just children, but that very often is the way children cope with a lot of trauma. And the fourth one is fawn. The freeze is kind of undisputed, a third stress response, but fawn is something I heard recently, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Fawn would be where you, more like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, where you're controlled by someone, and so you suck up to them. You try to make them happy. You try to do what they want. You fawn over them. You might even develop some genuine love for them. In fact, it's not unusual for abused children to love their parents very, very much. So fawn is what I would call the fourth one. It's really important that we understand how trauma affects everything in our lives and in the lives of each other. Trauma-informed care should be involved in education, mental health, law enforcement, medicine, juvenile justice, criminal justice, and family courts. Because people who are dealing with trauma simply need a different way of being coped with. When we are kids, we don't realize we're watching our parents grow up too. My mother was only 20 when I was born. She was married to a man 15 years her senior. He was abusive mentally, psychologically, and physically. Although they first separated before I was born, there was a remarriage, and my sister came from the remarriage and then the new divorce. My biological father's idea of child visitation was to come over and beat mom up for us. In the 50s, it wasn't even illegal to beat up your ex-wife in Texas. This is a song that reminds me of, that speaks to me because of my childhood, and I'm just going to sing it real fast for you. Last night I heard the screaming, loud voices behind the wall. Another sleepless night for me, it won't do no good to call the police. Always come late if they come at all. Last night I heard the screaming, loud voices behind the wall. Another sleepless night for me, it won't do no good to call the police. Always come late if they come at all. And when they arrive, they say they can't interfere in domestic affairs between a man and his wife. And as they leave, the tears well up in her eyes. Last night I heard the screaming, then a silence that chilled my soul. Prayed that I was dreaming when I saw the ambulance in the road. And the policeman said, "We're here to keep the peace. Let the crowd disperse. I think we all could use some sleep." Last night I heard the screaming, loud voices behind the wall. Another sleepless night for me, it won't do no good to call the police. Always come late if they come at all. Oh, thank you. Now, I knew that my mother was abused when I was a kid. What I did not know until about 6.5 years ago is that that PTSD translated to me. I didn't understand, and it's something we all need to understand, that if you threaten the caregiver of a child, you're threatening the child. I didn't understand that for 58.5 years. Now I do. Now I'm treated for PTSD after years of depression treatment, anxiety treatment, OCD treatment. The PTSD has really gotten to me in terms of the treatments and the way that I'm dealing with my life these days. It's really important. Part of the PTSD recovery is being a part of this congregation. You don't heal in isolation. You need your community. I like to think of it as tumbling stones, gemstones. They put them in a tumbler and they tumble them around, knock all the rough edges off, and then they come out beautiful. And I feel like community community in general, and this church in particular, has been a very important tumbler for me. I've gotten to learn and grow and make mistakes. I married a minister here. It was a big deal. If you don't know the story, believe me, you don't want to hear it today. The church, it lasted 20 months, but it looked like it was going to be great, but it was awful. I've had other relationships here that have crashed and burned and have been entertainment for the congregation at times. Like the time Mark Weaver brought another woman to the big event. Oh my God. So, belonging and being loved are core to the human experience. We are a social species. We are meant to be in community, emotionally, socially, and physically interconnected. Love is the foundation of our development. Trauma can impact this capacity to love and be loved. Evolutionarily, we were vulnerable when isolated and disconnected. In community, we can protect one another, cooperatively hunt and gather, and share. Love is relationship superglue. Now, the goal of trauma processing, which is something I feel like I'm doing every day of my life, is to develop the skills to deal with the ways that trauma manifests in your life. So if you're having panic or fear or despair or abandonment, dealing with PTSD and the triggers and coming to understand it can really help you with those underlying results of PTSD. So back to the poem. This church has helped me recognize the hole in the street, has helped me crawl out of the hole in the street, has helped me avoid the hole in the street, and has helped me ultimately to walk down different streets. And I couldn't have done any of this without you, and I just love you very much, and thank you for listening to me today.
And Becky will go back and extinguish our chalice now. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of love and community, which continues to burn in our hearts.
The benediction's on the pink piece of paper. Never underestimate the power of a person healing from their trauma. This person has been through the darkest places that the world has to offer and is still standing before you, committed to seeing the light. Amen. Now we're going to sing a congregational hymn, number 18, Stand as You Are Willing and Able. And I really want you to pay attention to the words, because the words of this hymn mean a lot to me and mean a lot to my message today. Warren's going to play it through once because the tune's a teeny bit tricky.